Well, that was quite an interview, wasn't it? But you probably are wondering, what in the world went on there? You want to know. Al-Fadi and I are now going to unpack it for you because he made an enormous amount of admissions. Stay tuned as we look at each one of these admissions and show their significance.
Welcome back to a continuation of this video series on creating the Quran. Of course, the last couple of episodes, I'm sure, have been very, very exciting to many of you. And at the same time, if you are a Muslim, probably the last two episodes sharing some of the comments and clips from the famous interview that took place on June 8th, 2020 between Yasir Qadhi or Dr. Yasir Qadhi and Muhammad Hijab would have been a very painful memory. And if you've never seen that interview, at least that clip probably would have enlightened you to the seriousness of that issue. So intentionally, we did not really unpack that clip last time because we wanted to at least to dedicate the whole episode just for sharing that clip and giving just a brief intro on that. Now we are going to take that interview and do, no pun intended, a deep dive on what took place in there. Dr. J, what are the issues that you would like to highlight here from that interview?
What I like to do is unpack it. They've all looked at it. You've all seen it now. I'm going to take phrase by phrase that Yasir Qadhi said. You notice a number of times Muhammad Hijab tried to interrupt, and he couldn't because Yasir Qadhi really controlled the conversation. I only put 7 minutes of 28 minutes, so most of it is not there. I just took the major things, the major admissions that he was making as he went through trying to answer Muhammad Hijab's questions. And he started out by putting his hand out there and said, what are you going to do? Which Mus'haf are you going to put there? Mus'haf means, Mus'haf would be the codex or the manuscript. Which manuscript? Which Qur'an really is what he is saying. If I put a blank piece of paper, he must have asked us 2 or 3 times throughout the interview. He kept putting his hand up and saying, which one? If I give you a pen, which one are you going to write? What he was saying is it the Hafs? Are you going to write the Warsh? Are you going to write the Qalun? Are you going to write the Kisai? Which one are you going to put there? Which one is the one that's actually going to be there? And he kept on saying Hafs al-Asam. Now, when you ever hear Hafs al-Asam, that means Hafs from the stable of, or the family of Asam. Asam is the Qira'at. He is the one from Kufa. Hafs is his student. Hafs died in 796. So we're talking about the 8th century. Already you can see if he died in 796, he could not have been a student that was of Muhammad. He was a student of Asif, and Asif died in the 8th, just about 50 years earlier than that. So because of this, you can see immediately this was a problem. I don't think at all that Yasir Qadhi was prepared for this. You don't see it, but when he first heard it, he says, turn the camera off. You don't talk about this in public. That was the first thing. So let's go to the slide. Let's see and unpack this interview. We call it Holes in the Narrative interview because that's where he introduced this phrase. You in East, he's talking about those there in where Yasir Qadhi, he's in London of all places, that's not quite the East. You have holes in your narrative. What narrative? The Islamic narrative. That's where the standard Islamic narrative, the standard narrative. So let's put it up there and let's take a look at some of these phrases. Well, right away, which Qira'at is the one that's in heaven? Which is the one that Muhammad received? This is the question that Muhammad Hijab is asking of Yasir Qadhi. And of course, the response is, do not ask me this question. Not in public. Turn the camera off, he says. Now, we don't see that because I didn't put that in there. I should have maybe put that in there at the very beginning. But he was very clear that he did not want to talk about this. This was very uncomfortable. Why do you think he reacted like this?
Well, I mean, he studied, obviously, academically, and he knows that, like you and I know, there are some problems. And he already stated that he doesn't want to be a hindrance or cause damage to the faith of many who will be watching because they don't have knowledge about these things.
Yeah, and this is not something we tell the whole world about. Yeah. He didn't even realize we were watching. I mean, he thought that this is just a little interview between him and the followers or those who are going to be on the same YouTube channel, which is interesting because he put it up on his channel as well. So it was, this whole interview was put up on both Yasir Qadhi's channel and also Muhammad Hijab. And then he talked about the ahruf in the qira'at are the most difficult topics. Now, he kept on going back and forth between ahruf and qira'at. More people have asked me, what is the difference between the ahruf and the qira'at? The ahruf, and when Yasir Qadhi ever defines it, the ahruf are the seven, the first seven. These are the ones that they're introduced by Ibn Mujahid in 936, or before before he died in 936. And these are the two, one from Mecca, one from Medina, one from Basra, one from Damascus, three from Kufa. And that's why it's fascinating that the majority of them are from Kufa, not even from Mecca or Medina, which you would think all seven should have been from the place the Prophet lived. Of the seven, 5 of them are not. They're all from up north. And remember, what we know about up north, isn't that where those are the derivations that Uthman burnt. He burnt all the ones from up north. And yet of the first 7 that were chosen by Ibn Mujahid, 5 of them come from the very places that they were burnt. Now, nonetheless, he's saying that this ahruf, let's say the ahruf are the first 7, and then the qira'at are the others, the other 23. The problem is, the difficulty with that immediately, you can see, really the first 7 are the qira'at. So sometimes he calls them qira'at, sometimes he calls them ahruf. How do you explain this? Because this is how he does it.
Trust me, brother, there are, if my memory serves me right, up to 40 different ways to explain this. So it is, and Yasir Qadhi made it clear that there are debates about this.
Yep.
Not even clear.
In other times when he's talked about it, he talks about the first 7 and then the other 3 that were introduced by Jazari. So the first 7 that are introduced by Ibn Mujahid in 936, and then the other 3 at the bottom, the one I had in red, that were introduced by Al-Jazari in 1549. These are introduced in 936. So that's 300 years. This is 800 years later. Those are the 10. And so he keeps on talking about the 10, qira'at. These are the creme de la creme, the best of the best. Those are the ones that you go to. He didn't do that in this interview because he wasn't really unpacking them like that. So those are the ones he's talking about are the ahruf. Let's just go and assume that those are the ahruf. And the qira'at would be the riwayat, really. These are the students or the ones that come afterwards. It's interesting he mentioned that we don't tell the new converts, those who are initially, who are young Muslims, we don't talk about this. When they're intermediate, so he gave 3 different stages. The young ones, we don't talk about this. So when you first become a Muslim, don't even mention it. It's just going to confuse them, he said. When they're a little bit more intermediate, if they do come up with the question, we just said, just believe it. Just don't question about it. For those who are more advanced, like Muhammad Hijab, then we do a deep dive. He kept on talking about this deep dive. Take my class.
But it sounds like Muhammad Hijab was not happy about that answer.
Not only that, did you notice what he said then later on? I've never lectured on this in 25 years. You'll never hear me talk about it. So what's this deep dive that he's talking about? Obviously, even the advanced students, he doesn't know what to do with. If Muhammad Hijab, who's been a Muslim all his life and is one of the leading Muslim proponents on the internet, if he asks him this question and he can't even answer it, and then he makes it, he's proud about the fact that for 25 years he's never talked about it, what is this deep dive that he's talking about? What would you guess this is?
Well, I mean, the only guess is that he's going to take them through the sources that you and I have access to try to explain to them the different opinions and what the scholars are saying. And probably at the end, he's going to say, we should take it by faith. Never question it.
And he exactly says that. We're going to get to that. But notice he says, for the last 1,000 years, the scholars have not known how to deal with this. At one point in the interview, I don't have that in these snippets here, he says Al-Jazari is the world's leading authority on this, and he was living in the 15th century, and he wrote 80 papers on the qira'at, and he never came to any conclusions. He could not solve it himself.
Are you telling me for at least 1,000 years between the time of Muhammad and his companions until Al-Jazari, we still have an issue?
For 800 years, we still have an issue. Yeah. And that's why the canon was closed on the qira'at. He was the one that chose the last 3 qira'ats and the last 6 riwayats to make 9. I'm sorry, 6 and 3 is 9. To make 9, which made up then 30. He was one that canonized it. He was one that closed that canon. And that's why from that time on, from 29 up till 1924. Those 30 were the official 30 out of the 700 that he had chosen, because he could not come to any conclusion himself. In a sense, he didn't solve the problem. He even enlarged the problem by adding another 9 to the 21 that had already existed. So you can see this is a real problem. Now there's some more. I want to unpack some more in the next episode. We're looking at the first 6 difficulties. There are many more that we want to look at. We want to get up to about another 10 problems I want to unpack, but that's for the next episode.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, brother. I think everybody can see now why that interview was so damaging damaging, not to us, damaging to someone who is a Muslim, especially if you are brand new Muslim, a convert to Islam. You can see now everything you've heard, why Islam is so wonderful, why you need to accept it as the final religion, final revelation, that it is the only way to heaven. You're beginning to notice that the primary source has so many holes in it. So what is it that you are going to base your faith on if the word of Allah has many varieties to it? Even Yasser Qadhi said in an interview, if I were to write the Quran on that blank book that Muhammad Hijab kept telling him, if I give it to you, it's not going to be just one type of reading, it's multiple qira'at, okay? So here is a leading scholar in that field acknowledging it's multiple ways of writing, maybe a collection, an eclectic Quran, if you wish. I would have loved it if you would have said it will be an eclectic Quran, which even if you do that, it's still going to look different than the most popular one, which is Hafs. And that's the dilemma. We're going to continue with taking our deep dive into these issues. Until next episode, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Sira International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.